Hello and welcome to Circle Time. Hi, Sue. How are you today? Sue, do you have any buttons on your shirt? You don't? I have some buttons on my shirt. There's one right there and there's one right there. Today, B is for buttons. We're going to read a story about Pete the cat. He's going to lose his 4 groovy buttons. Well, I hope you'll stick around until the end for story time. We're also going to make a giant button and we're going to watch buttons dance today. Sue's going to sit down now, though, because it is time for us to do our job. We need to feed Fred. Fred? Hey, here's some food for you. Well, now that we have fed Fred, let's turn around and see what day it is. The month is May. And let's reach into our cat and see how we will count. Blink our eyes. So can you blink and count with me? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Today is May 3rd. Can you say that? May 3rd. If you go up to the top, you can see that the day of the week starts with W. W says w, as in wake up. So what day of the week is it? W. Wednesday. Days of the week. 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 There's Sunday and there's Monday. There's Tuesday and there's Wednesday. There's Thursday and there's Friday. And then there's Saturday. Days of the week. 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 Well, let's look outside and see what our weather is like today. Maybe your weather is sunny. Maybe it's cloudy. Or maybe it's rainy. Did you go look and check? Okay, well, let's sing about it. When I do like this, just shout out whatever your weather is. What's the weather? What's the weather? What's the weather like today? What's the weather? What's the weather? What's the weather like today? It is out today. It is out today. Let's dress Weather Bear. Weather Bear, we're going to put on some pants for you and a shirt. And do you know what the season is right now? The season is spring. Well, that was our calendar time, and now it's time for our letter of the day. Today's letter is the letter B. Does your name have a letter B? If your name has letter B, stand up. If your name has letter B, stand up. If your name has letter B, if your name has letter B, if your name has letter B, stand up. Well, today B is for buttons, and I decorated the letter B with some buttons that I drew. First, I made 4 dots and then a circle around the dots and colored them. So this is the big B, and there's little letter B. You can decorate your letter B today if you like. Now let me show you how to write a letter B. First, you're going to make a number 1. And then you're going to blow 2 bubbles. One at the top and one at the bottom. 1 and 2 bubbles. That's how you make a big letter B. Let me show you on handwriting paper. And parents, you can get a copy of this handwriting paper on my website. The link is below. Look under Shop and Free, and this is a free resource for you. 1 and 2 bubbles. Number 1, and then blow a bubble upstairs. blow a bubble downstairs. 1 and 2 bubbles. If you want to make a little letter B, you just need to pop the top bubble. You only need a bubble downstairs. So 1 and 1 bubble. 1 bubble downstairs. Let's practice. Make a number 1 and then blow a bubble downstairs. 1 bubble. 1 bubble. 1 more. Okay, there's the little letter B, and I know you are doing a great job listening and learning. I want to cheer for you, and I want to give you a blue sticker. That's for your handwriting paper. Well, now we know what letter B looks like. We know how to write letter B. So next it's time to talk about the sound that letter B makes. Letter B says B, B, B. Can you make that sound too? B, B, B. It kind of sounds like we're popping bubbles. So let's practice that right now. I'll blow bubbles and you say the B, B sound as you pop the bubbles on your screen. Here we go. B, 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 B. What does letter B say? B, 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 B. Once more, what does B say? B, B, B. Well, that was our letter of the day time. The letter today is B for B, 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 buttons. Now I want to show you a really cool craft that you can make. It's a giant button. All you have to do is take a paper plate, and if you don't have a paper plate, just cut out a circle, and then you can color your button, and you can use a pencil. I poked with a pencil, get a grown-up to help you, 4 holes, and then I just put some yarn in the holes, and I made a big giant button today for art. Well, I have a fun experiment you can do for science today. It's called the dancing buttons. I have a jar right here, and inside there is some Sprite. Let me add a little more Sprite to the jar. Here's my Sprite. Do you like Sprite? Sprite is a soda, and it has carbonation in it. That means it has lots of bubbles. I'm going to pour some of the Sprite into this jar. Oh, I can already see lots of bubbles inside that soda. Well, watch what happens when I add some buttons inside the jar. Let me show you. I have some buttons right here. Let's see what will happen when I put a button inside. Oh, it went down to the bottom. Wait a minute. It's coming back up. Did you see that? Let me get closer so you can take a look. The button came back to the top. Let's drop in another button. There it goes to the bottom. Wait a minute. The button just went back up to the top. Let's try a bigger button. It went down to the bottom. There it is. And now it's going to the top. Let me put in lots of buttons and see what happens. They're floating back up. Whoa. It's making those buttons go back to the top. Well, if you can look really closely, and I'll try to focus it, you can see that the buttons have bubbles on them. The bubbles are stuck to the buttons. Enough bubbles means that the buttons will stay at the top. When the bubbles start to pop, then the buttons will go down to the bottom. But as long as there are buttons, as long as there are bubbles around the buttons, they'll float up, 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 up. There's enough carbonation in the soda that it's causing the buttons to be able to float. Let me show you that one more time. You can hopefully see it. There it goes. That's called the dancing buttons science experiment. Look at all those bubbles. Oh, they're popping. Wait, they're gonna go back up. Dancing buttons. If enough buttons pop, bubbles pop on the button, then it goes down, but then more bubbles get on it and it comes back up to the top. There it goes. You need more bubbles. Well, that was fun. I could keep watching that. That was really neat. Well, it's time for us to do story time. And so today's story is called Pete the Cat, Groovy Buttons, and his 4 groovy buttons. Pete the Cat put on his favorite shirt with 4 big, colorful, round, groovy buttons. He loved his buttons so much he sang a song. 1, 2, 3, 4 buttons. My buttons, my 4 groovy buttons, my buttons, my buttons. Oh no, pop! One of the buttons popped off and rolled away. How many buttons are left? 1, 2, 3. 3 buttons are left. 4 take away 1 equals 3. 1, 2, 3. Did Pete cry? Goodness, no. Buttons come and buttons go. He kept on singing his song. My buttons, my 3 groovy buttons. My buttons, my 3 groovy buttons. Uh-oh, pop! Another button popped off and rolled away. How many buttons are left? 1, 2. 2 buttons are left. 3 take away 1 equals 2. Did Pete cry? Goodness, no. Buttons come and buttons go. He kept on singing his song. My buttons, my 2 groovy buttons. My buttons, my 2 groovy buttons. 1, 2. Uh-oh, pop! Another button popped off and rolled away. How many buttons are left? 1. 1 button is left because 2 take away 1 equals 1. Did Pete cry? Goodness, no. Buttons come and buttons go. He kept on singing his song. My button, my 1 groovy button. My button, my 1 groovy button. Uh-oh, pop! The last button popped off and rolled away. How many buttons are left? 0. No buttons are left. 1 take away 1 equals 0. Did Pete cry? Goodness, no. Buttons come and buttons go. Pete looked down at his buttonless shirt. And what do you think he saw? He saw another button, his belly button. And he kept on singing his song. My button, still have my belly button. My button, still have my belly button. The end. We made a giant button today, and we made some buttons dance in some Sprite. And we also had fun reading about Pete the Cat and the letter B. B says, buh, buh, buh. We popped bubbles today, Sue. I hope you'll come back tomorrow. We'll have some more learning fun. Goodbye, everyone.